Join us today for an action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, where we finish up our way too early rankings debates.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes you to the channel and also gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly, guys, join us on the Subtext platform. Matt and I are starting to get way more active on there this time of year. We've officially unleashed our rankings on you guys. Have every position stacked out with 40 at all the infield spots, 100 plus at outfield from each of us, 100 plus at pitcher from each of us, even some early closer rankings. Just join us on Subtext, and all of your dynasty keeper questions are going to be answered on there too. But let's get into things today. Oh, real quick, guys, how could I forget our partner FanDuel? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. And all right, back with more debates. We're going to finish up off. If you guys were here yesterday, we started off. We did our normal yearly thing where I kind of, go after Matt for some of his rankings. So we didn't get to finish that yesterday. We're going to wrap that up here today. I have two more from Matt. And then Matt's going to switch it back on me for this year. And he's got some questions for my rankings. But first up, Matt, I need you to defend your Jonathan India ranking. You have him 9 at second base. Let's hear why you like Jonathan India.
Well, for starters, I feel like last year he got off to a hot start that was quickly, put out after, you look at, sorry, I hear my child screaming in the background, where he kind of just went on a tear from May to June in terms of power numbers, 9 home runs over those 2 months. And then April and May, he batted 287 and 278, which was also something unexpected, being what he did the year before, where he ended the year with a 249 batting average. And I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. Look how he's starting. But then the batting average kind of fell off a little bit, but the power continued a little bit in June with 5 home runs, then 4 in July. But then he got hurt in July, the end of July, and didn't come back until like almost the middle to end of September, where he still managed to crank out 3 bombs. I feel like if he would have played a full season last year, we might have saw a pace where he hit like 22, 23 home runs. I also feel we would have saw, a little bit more ribbies, a little bit more runs, and quite honestly, the batting average just looks like it disappeared, but I'm okay with it. I think 250 to 255, which is career batting average, kind of more realistic. And I feel like next year we might, next year, because we still have a week, we'll essentially be able to see what's going on, and my guy should pretty much crank it back up and almost look like, the rookie of the year season, with that team around him, allowing him to get more runs, steal more bases than he did that year, and add some ribbies along with it. Jonathan India, I think, is prime for a season, but you don't have to pay high. I just have him 9 over a few guys at second base. I have him right over Bryson Stott, which, you know what? I feel like they could have a very similar season.
I think that was crazy.
I think they have a similar season, except Stott's batting average is going to be super more elite, along with the stolen bases. We'll see about the ribbies potential, but the runs are pretty much going to be electric as well, where Bryson Stott is like essentially a 3-category contributor. So we'll see what that goes, because I mean that's going to be pretty much similar. Geloff is somebody I want to rank higher. I just can't yet. I need to see a little bit more out of him, and that's directly below him. And then you got Brandon Lowe, who is the injury phalanges extraordinaire, who, goes hot, hits 17 home runs in a matter of like 3 weeks, and then, disappears for about 3 months. So, there's reasons why I have India, and there's still that upside, the prospect potential, the age too, being that he's still only going to be 27 next year in the middle of his prime, and just the fact that he's been a little injury plagued. I feel like next year is the year to show it, and it'll be my last year on him. So far, I'm going to keep him at 9, but as we get closer to draft season, there is a potential for Stott to rise over him, but nobody else, truthfully.
Yeah, so the thing with me for India, there's 2 major things here. The first thing is he going to be on the Reds? There's been a lot of talk of India getting traded. The Reds really want to stock up on some more starting pitching, and it looks like India might be the odd man out. So my second thing kind of goes hand in hand with my first thing is, even if he stays, where does he play? When, roster resource right now does have him projected in the lineup, but they have him projected at DH over Christian Encarnacion Strand. And I don't see that happening. I usually agree with roster resource on everything. This is the first time I have a difference here where they have India in. I'm going to have Christian Encarnacion Strand, and then the lineup looks something like this, where you have TJ Friedel center field, McLean at second, Steer at left, Jamer Candelario at first, Encarnacion Strand DH, Ellie De La Cruz at short, Noelvi Marte at third, Will Benson in right field, and Stevenson at catcher. And the thing is, even if Indy is in that lineup on opening day over Strand or over anybody else, it's going to be a platoon, because I think there are just too many mouths to feed there in Cincinnati. So I think it makes a trade more likely for a guy like India, who's been in trade conversations. And where does he go? His numbers in, Great American Small Park, or Great American Hitter Park, as Matt calls it, haven't even been fantastic, where, the last 2 years, there has been some injuries, but the batting average hasn't been there. The homers haven't been there. 14 steals last year in 119 games. I like that. So in an ideal situation, he's maybe a 20-20 guy with a 240, 250 batting average, and runs and RBI is going to be dependent on where he hits in any lineup, on what team he's on. Just a guy I'm not willing to take a shot on at this point. The ADP is not bad. The ADP right now, 17th second baseman, pick 200. I'm not mad at you if you want to take your shot there. I have him at 27 at second base. I think second base is just super interesting. With names, I'll throw out some guys I have in between, where Matt has him and I have him. I have guys like Andres Jimenez. I think is younger, has more speed. I like where he's going to hit in that Indians lineup. Somebody like Trevor Story, I want to see what he can come back and do. Second year in Boston, healthy year. Jorge Polanco, Edward Julian. These are just guys I'm going to throw my dart at over in India. Not saying I hate the ADP at pick 200. You can totally throw your dart there. Won't blame you, but just not for me this year. Not somebody that I'm too keen on. But before we move on and we knock out this last guy that I want to talk to Matt about in his rankings, and then we get into Matt's going to get at me after my rankings, we have a quick sponsor for you guys.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action than now. The app is super easy to use with a wide range of betting options, including point spreads, player props, over and unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off this NFL season right. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 coverage, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts on Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Dear everydayers and new listeners, we have an incredible opportunity for you to help support the show and enjoy some fantastic perks along the way. Introducing our Diamond Club on Subtext. By becoming a member, you not only contribute to the show's success, but you also gain access to exclusive benefits we can't provide you in this 30-minute episode. We're going to have our redraft rankings, our dynasty rankings, our prospect rankings. We're going to have our bust lists, our value picks, our sleeper picks, so much more. Plus, you can go ahead and ask us to rate your draft, ask us questions, any kind of advice you have or need under the sun, just by joining the subtext and joining the Diamond Club. So check that out in the link of all the descriptions of all our channel of all our shows. Whew. Okay.
All right, Matt. A lot of talking there, brother. I appreciate you doing the heavy lifting there. While you take a well-deserved sip of your haterade there, my friend. I actually have a guy that I think I might be able to spin you on. Let's talk about Yainer Diaz, catcher for the Houston Astros. I absolutely love this kid. I'm going to talk about why I love him real quick, and then we'll let Matt come back and talk about his ranking. And Matt, where do you have him ranked again? I forgot. I have Yainer Diaz at 7 at catcher. I could see myself moving him up to 6 potentially, but I do have him at 7. I know you had him a little bit lower than myself. 16. Okay, so at catcher, that's a big enough difference because you don't have too many relevant catchers. So with Yainer Diaz, this kid was a monster down in the minors. He always hit for batting average in the minors, never hit lower than 294 in the minors, has a lot of power, and he's actually a solid catcher. That's the thing I like too. That's going to always keep you in the lineup, even if you're not a great bat. Sometimes if you're good at framing, if you got good pop time just being able to get down to second base to throw runners out. Yainer Diaz does it all. And I honestly think next year's going to be a breakout year. Scott might be a guy I own a lot of. I think 30 home runs with 90 RBIs and a 280 batting average is super realistic from a guy that a catcher. That's great. The early ADP is very high. He's actually coming off the board as the 5th catcher right now, pick 113. Just somebody I love, and he's only going to be 25 next year. Great young prospect for the Astros. Matt, have I convinced you to move him up at all?
No.
I love it. He's honest.
No, and the reason why is he doesn't play every game. So, that's the one thing when I'm looking at drafting a catcher at that high of a pick, right? Especially over a lot of guys. Last year, he played a full season up in the bigs. He played 6 games in the minors. And you look at it, and he really only started moving up to, plus 10, where he finally started kicking into gear in June, July, August, and September. Maybe there's a little bit more that I missed, and maybe there's just a little bit, maybe he started to earn more trust from the team. But then you look when it comes down to crunch time in September, October, only played about 12 games. So, I don't foresee him being the everyday catcher yet, which then therefore keeps him lower in my rankings.
Let me chime back in. They don't really have anybody else unless they go out and sign somebody. There's nobody I think he's earned the job at this point. So they just have Victor Caratini there, 30-year-old catcher. I think he's just there for insurance policies at this point.
Well, you would think that, but at the same time, though, there's just a matter of experience and defense and being able to, work with the pitcher relationship. There's a reason why JT Realmuto is still qualified as one of the best catchers in the league, because his bat is, in my opinion, has come down a little bit, but his actual framing and his actual defense, he's best catcher in the league. Right.
He's pretty good.
Whereas Diaz can be, but he still needs to earn the trust of not only the coaching staff, but the rotation. And I feel like he may not earn himself everyday playing time right away unless I see something change tomorrow. If I see that he's going to be the everyday catcher, then he's going to go up my rankings. I still don't know if I'm going to have him at 6 or 7 where you have him. He might be 9, 10, 11, 12. But right now, with the unknowns and the uncertainties being that it's December 20th when we're recording this, I don't have that information yet. But again, this is willing to change because I can see your upside. But I'm just thinking more of the information in front of me now is the reasoning behind my ranking at this point.
That's fair. I mean, I don't see anyone really in his way, but fair enough. If he doesn't have the job, I would definitely move him down. But my ranking is based upon I think he's got it. But now let's move out of this portion of it. You're home free, brother. The ranking debate on your side is over. Let's hear what you got for me. I know you got some good names lined up, and let me see if I can defend some of my rankings here.
So I want to know why in hell do you have Grandpa Rumpelstiltskin 1.5 shoulders, and by 1.5 he has his shoulder he doesn't throw with, and then the shoulder he does, that's the half. Chris Sale, tell me why you have him ranked at picture 30.
So I have Chris Sale at 31. Matt, where did you have him at the moment? I'm just curious as I pull up ADP as well to see where ADP stands on Chris Sale at the moment.
I have him at 49.
Okay, 49. I'm sure ADP is a lot more lined up with where you have him than I do, actually. Yeah, Chris Sale is pitcher 70 off the board right now when it comes to ADP. You've got a bunch of relief pitchers mixed in there because on NFBC, where I'm grabbing my ADP from, has closers. So even if there's 15 closers there, you're still talking about starting pitcher 55, right? Why am I so high? Now I don't necessarily know. Once again, when you talk about anybody's rankings, it's not necessarily I'm taking Chris Sale strictly at my pitcher 30. It's just that's where I like him. That's where if I had to reach for him, that's probably my limit. When you look at the baseline numbers last year, you're like, okay, the ERA was pretty high at a 4.30. The strikeouts were actually pretty good, 102 innings, 125 strikeouts, and the whip was actually really strong too at a 113 whip. His FIP, which is fielding independent pitching, it's an ERA indicator, was actually 380. So, he kind of pitched a little bit higher than that ERA. But I look at it like this. If Sale is healthy and on the mound, which is a huge question mark, he's dominant because he was brushing, a little bit of rust off last year coming into the season. He did not look good over I believe it was his first 5 starts, right? So if you come down and you look at the rest of his year, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think it's like 15 starts, right? Yes, 15 starts for Chris Sale's last 15. 79 innings, 95 strikeouts, a 3.16 ERA, batters hit 197 against him, a lot of swings and misses. The stuff looked great. And I really think if we see 25 to 28 starts of Chris Sale, he finishes as a top 25 starting pitcher. The stuff isn't super diminished. It's just a matter of can this guy stay on, the diamond on the mound to keep pitching. I could see myself moving him down maybe a little bit, but when it comes to guys like Sale versus, I could see him definitely moving down over the next 3. I have Ober, Bybee, Gavin Williams, and Logan Gilbert as the 4 after him. So could I move Sale down behind those guys? Yes. But then you have somebody like Nestor Cortez coming off an injury himself, Carlos Rodon, who's a question mark. Who else is there in there? Dylan Cease, another question mark. Christian Javier, question mark. Jordan Montgomery, who maybe you could talk me into. But I just think the talent is there for Chris Sale.
So the one thing I got to point out before we hit this break is Chris Sale last year, you're saying he's rubbing off some rust, but I think he's also rubbing on some, some, Neosporin, some Icy Hot.
Yeah, of course. That comes with territory.
Some Bengay, because like straight up, he only had 2 months out of the whole year, the whole season, where he had an actual starting pitcher's workload where he had 6 starts. And the other one was August, which is just August and May, which is his highest, but June he completely missed. Now he had 1 start. It was a 2.54 ERA, 2.45 ERA with only 3 innings. August he pitched about 18. Like, my guy isn't doing what he normally did. And in August he had a 5.30 ERA. And in April he had a 6.75 ERA. Now, yes, May looked all right with a 2.42. And September he did come through for you with a 2.88. But he's not consistent anymore. And to be the pitcher 30 in anybody's rankings is saying, hey, I feel that I could walk away with him as my pitcher 3. And that really shouldn't be the case. Like, honestly, I feel being with the ADP as it is, and where I possibly have ranked that I think is a more fairer ranking of him, just based off of the fact that you could stare him down. Yes, he could be in a different tier, but he could also be more of a value pick and a guy you're going to just grab towards the end of the draft versus somebody you're saying, okay, I feel confident walking away with, because dude, he could blow up in your face, and you know what? I'm going to take 3 championships this year. Like, it's just going to go like that,
It's just that, once again, if he's healthy, he's fine. If he is healthy, he will be a good pitcher. It's just a matter of, can you get those 25 to 28 starts? And where my ranking reflects is, I'm thinking yes, you can, but it's by no guarantee. Like I said, I can move him down to where more as I'm drafting him as an SP4, but where he's going right now in ADP, you don't even have to pay that. I'll take him at pick 182 all day long if I know that's where I can get him. You always jump maybe 20 picks, so I'll take him at pick 160, get him as my SP, 5-6, and I'll walk away more than happy with that. But let's move on, my brother. Who do you got up next for me?
Well, before we do that and we talk about an awesome name, which I will tease this one, we're going to be talking about Dom's atrocious ranking of Shane Bieber. We have one more break for you. All right, and we are back. All right, and like I said right before the break, Dom, why do you hate Shane Bieber? Like, just why?
Well, okay, so I think it's more that you have a man crush on Shane Bieber, because when I'm looking at ADP here, early ADP has him starting pitcher looks like around like 55. I have Shane Bieber at pitcher 53, starting pitcher 53. The pick is 171 for Shane Bieber. I actually do like that. So where do you have him? And I'll talk about why I have him a little bit lower. I see the upside potential with Shane Bieber. Don't get me wrong. The stuff isn't that diminished. It was really just the cutter last year that was the pitch for him, right? The fastball wasn't really fantastic. But the cutter's the pitch that really was his good pitch and got hit around last year. Batters hit, it was about 267 against the cutter. They hit 259 against the fastball. I know he was a little bit banged up last year, but the underlying stuff hasn't looked right for the past couple of years since that monster 2020 season. I know he was strong in 2022, but he's just not somebody I feel really super comfortable. The strikeouts took a big dip last year. As I said, the cutter was his big pitch, didn't really perform the way he wanted to. The whip jumped up to a 1.23 last year. Even in 2021, the whip was a little high at a 1.21. It's just every year starting to look more like that 2020 was really the outlier, and it was only 12 games. I know 2022 was strong for him. I'm just not fully buying back in, and I kind of understand why ADP is where it is. Honestly, another guy, if you can get him around pick 200, I'm in. I might even could see myself moving him up inside of the top 50 at starting pitcher, but just not a guy I'm running out there and targeting.
So, I hear all of that, and I look at it, and you say 2021, but last year was a pretty damn good year in 2022. Like, he had 31 starts, 200 innings. He had 198 strikeouts.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I might have been saying 2021. I meant to say 2022. That's my fault. That's the year I was referring to.
Okay, we're only 1 year removed from that, quite honestly. And his FIP, fielding independent pitching, was literally 287 to his 288 ERA. Now, I can't see how that's not how we could just say, okay, it's gone, it's out the window. He looked like absolute doo-doo. The only thing that would probably change my ranking of him as 36 for me, pitcher 36, would be as if he goes to a new team, which is the only question mark. Now, if that happens, yes, he's gonna get a discount double check and go down in my rankings just based off of my rule of new year, new team. But Shane Bieber, if he returns to the Guardians, he's going to be just fine. I feel like he was dealing with a little bit of the elbow injury this year, and that was affecting him and had to change his whole mechanics in order to become successful. But still, once he figured it out, he was a strikeout machine, and he was producing, at least in that. And ERA was a little inflated. He gave up, a little bit extra home runs this year, but still not as many as last year. And I look at it, and his limited innings in comparison, he was on much higher pace of home runs given up this year, whereas 14 in 128 games to 18 in 200 innings. Okay, there's a reason why. And he's never been that guy where he gives up a whole bunch of home runs. Like in 2021, he gave up 11. Last time he did something like that where he had a ridiculous year, so it was in 2019, and he gave up 31 home runs and still managed to keep it as a 3.28 ERA. Shane Bieber is somebody I think is going to be fine. And if I'm getting him as cheap as an ADP is showing, I'm going to be salivating. But, dude, I'm totally comfortable walking away with him at my pitcher 3.
So where did you have him ranked again?
36.
You see that? Yeah. I mean, I still think that's a little bit high. Let's keep things pushing here, though. I think that's a fair enough, conversation on Shane Bieber. Who is your next guy that we wanted to talk about here, brother?
You buried this dude, Merrill Kelly.
Okay, so Merrill Kelly, I think this is a guy that I could back on my stance a little bit more. Bieber is somebody that I see the path for a Bieber to have a bounce back type season. But Merrill Kelly is somebody that going to be 35 next year. I kind of just want to start there. I'm not going to rely on a 35-year-old starting pitcher who, has only really broken out the last 2 years. Before that, he was never really a highly touted prospect, kind of broke into the MLB at age 30. I know the last 2 seasons look great. Just the underlying stuff doesn't look good. His stuff isn't somebody that's blowing me off the page when you look at, his stuff. Just somebody, I think my ranking is fair. Honestly, I have him at 56 when it comes to starting pitcher. You get this guy as your starting pitcher 5 or 6. The wins could be decent on that Arizona team, World Series team last year. The ERA, even if you look at his FIP, that we talk about FIP every now and then, it was a 3.85 compared to the 3.29 ERA. So I can see Merrill Kelly being like a high 3s ERA, right around a K per 9. Last year was the first year ever in his career where he was over a K per 9. So I don't really even see any difference between the pitch mix or anything that he did differently to get, those more strikeouts. So I don't know if that's a sustainable gain in strikeouts. And the whip was a 1.19. So you're talking about a guy who's kind of like a mediocre, pitcher. He kind of gets lost in that, big group of starting pitchers, that ranges from like 40 to like, almost 80, where you could kind of arrange those guys in almost any order, and it wouldn't really be shocking to almost anybody. So Merrill Kelly is just, I think, a very average starting pitcher, not going to do anything, exponentially great, but somebody that you could have is, like I said, if I get him as my SP6, I'm walking away pretty happy with that. Not somebody I hate, just not somebody I love either.
And I see all of that, right? Like, one thing we usually say on this podcast is we usually don't buy the, older breakout, but with pitching, it's a little bit different. Now, this is really old. This is almost like grandpa status. Now, don't get me wrong, but the thing is too, though, like I have him as pitcher 39, and I think
that's a little high.
Not really. I mean, it's what 12 off of where you have him ranked.
I have my 56.
56, so 14 off. And based off of what he did last year and the year before, it's giving me confidence. And I've been on him for a couple of years, been watching him. Now, I didn't expect the K per 9 to be there, but he's an innings eater where he's going to pitch a lot of innings. Like 2022 pitched 200 and had 177 strikeouts. Now, the K per 9 isn't great, but he was able to keep his ERA low. Even his FIP was kind of right on par, and had 200 innings and was able to just do his job. Now, this year, I think it was a little bit more luck. He gave up one less home run than he did the year before, I might add. And he just really just did his thing. Now, I'm just impressed. I think he's figured something out. Pitchers do that, especially as they get older. And I think maybe Merrill Kelly is kind of more of somebody that's going to be reliable as a pitcher for. And I'm okay with walking away with that. And I think it's repeatable. Maybe not the K per 9, but I think the ERA, I think the wins, and I think if we're lucky, a K per 9 or maybe right under it. And you can feel pretty happy about walking away with a solid name. Because, I mean, after that, you got guys that are around him where you got like Bobby Miller, question marks, but I like him. Carlos Rodon, is he really back? Hunter Green, a lot of upside. Jordan Montgomery, will he be even on the same team? Where is he going to be next year? Savale, again, I love him. We talked about him last week with Frank Stanfield. I love him a lot. But again, I want to see a little bit more. Merrill Kelly is in the same boat. I like him a lot, and I think he's just going to be consistent for next year.
Yeah, I'll throw this out there. You make a good point. As far as some of those guys have a lot of volatility. If you've taken, very safe starting pitchers at the top, then you kind of at that point you can take some of those pitchers that are a little bit more risque. But if you've done vice versa, if you've taken some more risque pitchers at the top, you can kind of stabilize your rotation with a Merrill Kelly. I don't know if we mentioned the ADP on Merrill Kelly right now. It's pitcher 64 overall. I would say that's probably around starting pitcher 50, pick 163. I'm throwing my dart in other directions at that point in the draft myself. But I mean, I just think there's a lot more upside plays there, and you can take Merrill Kelly as a rotation stabilizer, a guy that you know is not going to really destroy you. But with that being said, guys, we are going to wrap up. That's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Until next time, guys. See you.
Peace.